Welcome to the UniverCity Alliance, connecting broader impacts to local governments. I'm Kevin Niemi. I'm with the WScience group at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. WScience stands for Wisconsin Institute for Science, Education, and Community Engagement. I am with the latter half in the name, the community engagement. I'm a director and have been doing this position upwards of 24 years now, basically connecting the resources of the campus to the community. And community is everything from public to K-12 system to K-12 teachers, etc. And what you're going to learn about today with this presentation is how a new entity, the UniverCity Alliance, is helping connect campus resources to the needs of local governments. The philosophy of this engagement is really focused around the idea of the Wisconsin idea. This is a UW system policy, or I prefer philosophy, that the university research needs to benefit all the citizens of the state. And it was first expressed and called the Wisconsin idea by the UW president in 1904, Charles Van Hise, who was part of the progressive movement here in Wisconsin. And early on, the university was called upon to help with some of the political challenges, whether it was voting or organizational structures within the government. And this progressive movement really helped him think about how the university can be of benefit to all the citizens in the state. Therefore, the expression of this idea called the Wisconsin idea. Another early example of the Wisconsin idea was the first public radio broadcast was on the University of Wisconsin campus. It was not a Madison campus yet. It was the University of Wisconsin in 1917. And that first public radio broadcast became WHA, and it served as a voice around Wisconsin for the university to share its educational findings and its research findings with all the citizens of the state. And it eventually, through a number of expansions and new campuses being formed within the system, became the Wisconsin Public Radio Network in 1971. So that's a very specific example of the Wisconsin idea early on. What I want to talk about on this slide is the importance of networks and the ability of the networks to help with matchmaking between community partners and the University of Wisconsin resources. One example is the network at the School of Education. This is a unit that's about 5 years old and basically matches school districts with individuals on campus who can help them with their questions. Those questions may be something like data analysis of trends in assessment scores for students. They may not have the expertise within the school district or may want to add to their expertise. And what the network basically does is asks individuals on campus and solicits ideas and names of individuals who are willing to consult, basically, and be part of the research solution for the districts. Another one on this list I'm very familiar with is called the Science Alliance. This is about a 20-year-old alliance, informal network of science outreachers on campus. And we meet weekly to share successes, share challenges, as well as organize specific events like the Wisconsin Science Festival in the fall, which draws tens of thousands of individuals to campuses around the state of Wisconsin. We're centered in Madison, and our campus draws, as one might expect, thousands of individuals to a weekend of engaging with STEM scientists and researchers. And that can be everything from faculty, staff, and students, and grad students and postdocs. The Alliance also puts on an event in the spring, basically our campus open house. Again, tens of thousands over the last 20 years of existence of the Science Alliance and science expeditions engage with scientists and get to hear from the mouths of scientists and researchers what they're up to and why it's important. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to another partner or network on this slide called the UniverCity Alliance. And it's on to Gavin.
Thanks a lot, Kevin, for that background about the Wisconsin Idea and the Science Alliance and the broader impacts group at UW-Madison. Wanted to introduce myself to everyone. My name is Gavin Luter. I'm managing director of the UniverCity Alliance at UW-Madison. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we go about doing our work with local government. So, first, let me explain a little bit about the UniverCity Alliance. It's essentially a network of leaders across campus. This could be faculty, staff, or even in some cases, students who are interested in working with cities and local governments. So we strive to be that front door for local governments. There are other groups who want to be the front door for community-based organizations or private sector organizations, or maybe even specifically science groups. We are trying to be the front door for local governments. And the idea is that the variety of challenges that local governments work on are very interdisciplinary, whereas the university is very siloed. I'm sure a lot of you all can identify with that. So we've put together an advisory board of people from everything from our Extension Institute to the School of Public Affairs to computer science to law to the School of Education. And we're trying to build relationships across campus to make sure that those folks know each other and can maybe get projects underway that are more interdisciplinary in nature. So our advisory board meets once every other month. And we usually have a speaker of somebody who's of broad interest to cities. And then we have an opportunity to be able to share information and build a program, which I'm going to talk about with you in a second. So the advisory board is made up of a really interdisciplinary group of people. You can see here a little bit more about our leadership. So it's myself and another staff member. So we're 1.8 FTE combined. And then we also have 3 co-chairs. One is the Associate Director of the Global Health Institute and Director of the Women's Wellbeing in Wisconsin and the World Initiative. Her name is Lori Dupree Brown. We also have a Dean, Paul Robbins, for the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, because a lot of local governments have concerns about sustainability. Then we also have Joel Rogers, who's director of a think tank on campus called COWS. It used to be called the Center on Wisconsin Strategy, but instead now it's just known as COWS. He's also a professor of law, political science, public affairs, and sociology, and has been working with cities all across the country for a very long time through a couple of initiatives that are run by COWS. One is the Mayor's Innovation Project, and one is the State Smart Transportation Initiative. So this is something that Joel has been very involved in. So we meet as a leadership team about once a month, and we help set the agenda forward for the University Alliance and our board meetings. And we also help oversee the UniverCity Year program, which I'm going to be talking about in a second. So that's where we come in with the UniverCity Year program at UW-Madison. We realize, as you can see here, there are a couple of realities in local governments. First of all, the scope of the challenges they deal with are huge. Everything from water quality to road construction to social equity goals in neighborhoods. They have really large challenges. However, they don't always have the capacity and bandwidth to be able to deal with those issues. We know that local governments are the smallest and leanest form of government, so therefore they are constantly looking outside for consultants and thought partners. They really do need thought partners to help them figure out how to deal with the scope of the challenges that they're dealing with. Even something as complex as education happens locally at the local government level. And this is the future of our kind of our country. We also know that local governments have a lot of committed leaders. These are people who run for local office. They give a ton of their time, and you see them at the grocery store, and they kind of can't avoid interacting with people in their in their localities. So they really, really love their localities. They want to help, and sometimes they just don't always have the ability to do what they want to do. Now, the reality in higher education is that we have a bunch of siloed experts, people who are very, very smart, but they're in their own little silos in their own departments, centers, institutes, schools, and those kinds of things. We also know that higher education leaders are looking for real world experience and training for our college students. There has been more than one criticism that's been leveled of higher education, saying that our students are not as prepared as folks think they should be when they enter the workforce. We also have people who want to be able to make an impact. An impact in a variety of ways. They want to make sure that their scholarship is actually having some kind of change in the world or creating some kind of change. And we also have a lot of people in higher education who are willing to ask questions. Regardless of how naive or informed they may be, people are interested in asking questions in higher education, from the students all the way up to the faculty and the leadership. So with the UniverCity Year program, we wanted to be able to accelerate innovation at the local level, make sure that the next generation of workforce and leadership are trained to be able to enter that workforce. And we also know that communities have a lot to share with us, and so we want to be able to learn from these communities and share what it is that they're doing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more detail about what exactly UniverCity Year is next. So over a 3-year period of time, the UniverCity Year program walks local governments through a 4-step process. So essentially, we start out with an application that we put out, and we call it a request for partnerships. And then local governments say, hey, we think we need help in a variety of areas. So this could be projects where they really feel like they're stuck, things that they wanted to get momentum on, that they just haven't really had a chance to get momentum on recently. And so they can put down everything from flooding to affordable housing to garbage collection to sustainability initiatives. They want to get off the ground, maybe converting more energy to green energy as opposed to from fossil fuels. Really anything they struggle with, they can kind of put in that application. And then we essentially work with them to figure out what exactly a project would be. And then we try to match those projects with solutions-based courses usually. It doesn't always have to be a course. It can be any kind of an entity that we have within campus. It could be a fellowship, it could be an internship, it could be a course, it could be an independent study, or it could just be connecting people with the faculty research agenda, which is probably most relevant to broader impacts. So we try to match them with faculty. So we essentially take those projects and shop them around the university and find people who are willing to work on them. And then so that happens over a 1-year period of time. The next year, once we get those projects ironed out and we have good scopes of work, then students and faculty essentially go and they produce some kind of a deliverable for the local government. So they work on some kind of issue, could be data analysis. We'll get into what the specific deliverables are later, but they work on something, and then in the last year, when after the local governments have received their research reports, designs, and those kinds of things, then we try to help them think through how to prioritize what they've just gotten and be able to take them from ideas into action and implementation. Of course, we can't do all of the implementation work. We, of course, are only a university, and we have done our part by giving them ideas for research and paths forward. But when it comes to implementing things, that's going to be up to the locality. But we do try to support them through getting teams back together and thinking about next steps that they can do, and maybe even additional resources that they might need from us or from other sources of funding. It could be other areas of expertise that they need from other groups that we might have a connection with or that others do. So that is our general 4-step process that happens roughly over a year's time. Now, the thing that I want to emphasize here is that we work a lot with local governments on scoping problems. You all may be familiar with working with community-based organizations, or you may not be, but certainly you're familiar with working with academicians. And sometimes the questions that academics like to ask do not always match up nicely with how local governments are framing problems. So we do spend that first year, a period of time, to try to take their rough sketches of what exactly they'd like to work on, and then we try to figure out how to mold them into projects that would fit nicely into a course or might fit better into a research agenda. That might be some back and forth conversation with the faculty. It might just be our help. This past year, we facilitated two meetings with two different local partners who knew that they broadly wanted to work on the areas of education, health, and economic development, but they weren't exactly sure what they wanted to do in those areas. So we brought some facilitators from UW-Madison and intensely helped them focus on what exactly they wanted to do with those projects and try to get very, very precise, answerable questions that we could then pose to the faculty to get them interested. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize the fact that we do work quite a bit with local governments on problem scoping. Now, this next slide is to start to give you a sense of magnitude. Who have we worked with in the past? What does it look like? So our first local government partner was the city of Monona, which is a city of about 7,500 people, just outside of Madison. As a matter of fact, strangely enough, it's actually surrounded by the city of Madison. It's kind of a strange city in that way, that it's surrounded by another city. But we were able to match 23 classes in 13 different disciplines that amounted to about 30 projects total in 4 areas, as you can see on the screen here. And really, this was everything from leaf management practices to be able to clean up stormwater, to affordable housing siting and economic development strategies, to engineering upgrades to parks, to how do we better preserve Native American, in our areas, Ho-Chunk Nation. We're on the native land of the Ho-Chunk. How do you preserve Native American and Ho-Chunk traditions through park signage? And how do you raise more awareness of those cultural backgrounds that are housed on the land where their parks are? So really, it's a wide-ranging set of problems and projects that we worked on. So that was our first engagement. Our second engagement was Dane County, and that is the county in which Madison and University of Wisconsin-Madison are located. We had slightly fewer projects. We had about 26 projects across 20 classes in these 4 areas that you see on the screen. Really, this ranged in everything from conservation planning for a couple of local creeks that fed into our broader watershed of a couple of lakes that we have here. And we also did frequent users of county services, basically helping the county understand where the overlaps are in services when people are tapping into multiple community services and they're not necessarily realizing that they're the same people using their services. We also did some general economic development strategies for them. We looked at cooperative arrangements for childcare and housing and education. And like I said, we did some work around affordable housing as well. We did a bunch of affordable housing site analyses for Dane County. Our next locality was just to the south of Madison and Dane County. It was Greene County. As you can see here on the map. We actually did the most projects with them that we'd ever done before. Their scoping process was a little different, that we worked with the county. We actually worked with the county economic development agency, and they had a lot of different local governments who were their membership. And then essentially what they did was they pitched that this opportunity was something that their local governments could take advantage of. And so all the different local governments come through their comprehensive plans and things that they wanted to do, and then they pitched to us. We had about 100 projects that we had to whittle down from, and we found that about 50 of them were matchable with faculty. So we don't always match everything. Sometimes we just have internal capacity, but we realized that about 50 projects was getting close to our maximum capacity that we could manage over 1 year. And as you could see here, it's everything from operations, so that could mean consolidation of 911 services. We did a cost-benefit analysis of whether or not they should consolidate 2 of the city 911 services to the county 911 service. We also did some work around economic development, helping the county economic development agency do put together some data for their site selection applications. When they have them, they basically need to turn them over really quickly. So our students put together a spreadsheet of relevant data for Greene County so they could have that at their fingertips. We also did work on the opioid crisis and helped them think about some evidence-based programming through our public health program. We also helped them think about how to transition some school energy sources to green energy and through solar panels. So the projects really, as you can tell, vary. And I'm going to give you some other concrete examples later on. But that was our third engagement. It was the first time that we ever went, quote unquote, away from home, farther away. So we had a lot more virtual engagements here, but it seemed to work really well. Our next partner, I'll tell you about in a second, was even farther away. So I don't know if you all can see on the slide, on the map here, Pepin County is about a 3-hour drive from Madison. This is the first time we ever went way far outside. And we actually were able to match more than 17. A couple of projects got added at the last minute. We ended up working with the school district and a couple of individual villages on their own, as opposed to just working through the county. But mostly those projects fell in those 3 areas that you see here on the right: sustainability, economic development, and water quality. They specifically were struggling with a lot of nitrates in the groundwater issues, and how this impacted their kind of tourism sector, and trying to figure out how to balance supporting agriculture, farmers, and not painting a target on their back saying that they're the reason why they have nitrates in the groundwater. Trying to balance that with also finding more sustainable agriculture practices that could help improve the groundwater, or at least restore it. So this is currently going on now. So we are in year 2 with Pepin County. So this is our furthest away engagement, and I think it's actually been quite successful. We've had nothing but positive feedback given from our local partners. I also wanted to turn attention to the fact that we are already seeing impacts from these different local governments. They tell us that it's definitely worth their time and money. I didn't mention, but I should mention now, there is actually a cost to the local government to go through this experience. The cost is fairly minimal. It's about $25,000 per 7 projects that they work on, and we try to cluster them by themes. So that's how we charge. But, the local governments basically tell us this was essentially the shot in the arm that they needed to be able to get projects unstuck. With Monona, we've already seen bike and pedestrian policies get passed that were informed by our active transportation group. They've already told us that they see more citizens being engaged. And they do have plans and designs for 2 parks that they didn't have beforehand. In Dane County, the affordable housing investment fund that they had, they actually chose to double the amount of affordable housing loans that they put out there, and they credited our students with helping them realize how important that was, and that they could actually get a good return on investment for that. And then in Greene County, as I told you a little bit about the energy efficiency project in one of the schools, they've already told us that they have the lowest power costs or electric costs that they've ever had in the school's history. That's actually the picture you see here, Judah. They told us that they've been able to dramatically reduce the amount that they're paying for energy, and they've also gotten more Public Service Commission grants to help them install more solar. The Public Health Department has already planned and implemented the Mental Health Navigator program that our students help put together a logic model for. We've also redesigned marketing materials for one particular school district. So even as as soon as 6 months out, people are starting to see the products that we have produced as meaningful and creating impacts within their broader community. I just wanted to throw this slide up there to let you all know that the kind of deliverables that our students are creating are pretty wide ranging. Everything from reports to data analysis to communications and promotional materials down to health impact assessments and community engagement strategies. Really, it's anything that the local government may want that could help them advance their practices. I think the slide that I had up earlier about trying to get them to understand what exactly their project is and how do we scope out that project. A big part of that is helping them understand what our students can possibly deliver. Now, sometimes our students are kind of locked into, say they're in the cooperatives class, for instance. Essentially, the cooperatives class can only do a report. They don't have much more capacity to do a data analysis. But at least if we put this up to the local governments to understand what they want and what is possible, depending on the kind of match that we can make with the different faculty members. So you can see on here just two examples. This is the school district rebranding campaign. So we did a brand book through our communications and journalism program. And then we did a site analysis for solar and geothermal and wind energy for that one particular school. They chose to go only with the solar in terms of their implementation. But this just gives you a sense of what we kind of talk to them about what is possible. The next part of this presentation is just to try to link this back in with broader impacts. I just wanted to say how important it is to have an entity that can go out and listen to local governments, even if you don't necessarily have a UniverCity Year on your campus, for instance. There might be able to be, your Center for Civic Engagement or Center for Public Service or your state relations office might be able to be listening to what local governments need and then be able to help broker those relationships. The way that I think of myself and our shop here is that we're kind of a relationship manager for the different local governments to be able to navigate the large bureaucratic university and just having one point of contact as opposed to having to feel like they have to go to many different places. This is kind of what they're willing to pay for, is to figure out how to tap into all of our different resources and expertise by just tapping into us as one entity. That is where we've also been able to provide support in scoping. I think that's incredibly helpful before you go to faculty members, is to help the local government and the community partner figure out what exactly they need before we take it to faculty members. Also, the leaders of cross-campus networks connecting periodically. So the UniverCity Alliance, we do regularly meet with another group, Water at UW-Madison, which is kind of a group of researchers and scholars who are interested in water quality across the state and across the country and across the world. And also having myself connect with people like Kevin, who's the leader of a network, the Science Alliance, as well as the Morgard Center for Public Service, who connects with community-based organizations. We are constantly in contact with each other, and I think that's really important. I did want to mention that there is a network of people who do projects like UniverCity Year at other universities. We have University of Washington as a member, Texas A&M is a member, University of South Florida, University of St. Thomas, the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities areas. Arizona State University is a member. San Diego State University is also a member. So there are other universities who do these kinds of projects all around the United States, and we wanted to raise your awareness that this is a network that does specifically try to connect with local government. So you could find a little bit more by going to epicn.org. Before I conclude here, I wanted to just give a couple of example projects that I think might be well suited to connect with people in broader impacts. We've had one of our local governments ask us about help with blue-green algae. They've had a lot of blue-green algae blooms in their bay over the summer, and they've had to close beaches as a part of that. So they're trying to figure out what might be some alternative uses to blue-green algae. So we've connected with some scientists to figure out how they might help them think through that. Sustainable road maintenance. How can they do better road maintenance to their roads?